Hello and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. And friends, this is the big topic I want to talk about today: work-life balance. Now, before you dive in and you say, oh God, where is that right now in my life? Hello, we are recording this on July 17th, 2020. We are still very much in the middle of a global pandemic that none of us have been able to escape so far. And I want to talk about work-life balance in the now. Like right now, world is completely different than it was 6 months ago. So let's see if there's some new bits of information, resources, or practical tips that we can apply to how it is that we manage both sides of our life. So my special guest today to tackle this topic in particular, well, her name is Nancy Florence, and she's a business and success coach for women founders, CEOs, and digital nomads. After a decade of entrepreneurship and psychotherapy practice, she has decided to combine her mindset skills with action-oriented business strategies to really support female founders like you and I in creating greater wealth and freedom. She's also the author of her forthcoming book, Wealth Warrioress Book, and she is going to publish that later this year. She enjoys empowering women to live by their desires and make a difference in the world. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Nancy Florence. Hey, Nancy.
Hello, Marie. Thank you for such a warm welcome.
I am so glad you're here, and I always love it when you say my name like that, Marie. So here we are, smack dab in the middle of the pandemic, no vaccine in sight. Things have been in lockdown in England for, gosh knows, 4 months now or so. However, things are starting to change. Again, things are lifting. Kids are starting to go back to school here in England. What's changed for you when it comes to work-life balance? How do you define it?
So most of my work is online. Mm-hmm. So in terms of my business, not much has changed, I have to say. I'm still very much coaching with my clients, plodding along. I do spend more time with them than ever.
Yeah.
When the pandemic happened, I understood very quickly that this was the time to give them even more time and attention than usual. But I was one of the lucky people that rode the wave quite easily, I have to say. Still working from my home office, still working on Zoom and working with my virtual team. So I'm one of the lucky ones. However, with the added challenge of the children being out of school. And actually, I was offered the opportunity to send them back to school, and I decided not to, because one of them is in year 6. She would have been back at school, and the other one, who's in year 2, would have had to stay at home with me. Yeah. And I just thought, you know what, I'll just keep them both at home, nice and safe. And so the challenge for me right now is to keep them entertained and occupied during the day, to make sure that they get their daily exercise, a healthy lunch, whilst Mummy is also coaching her clients. So, yeah, I have a lot to say about that.
Yeah, and I think you and I are very similar in that. I mean, my team is 100% remote. They have been for a few years now. So for us, business as usual, working from home, doing video calls, also having that internal systems in place for team meetings and connecting and making sure we're on top of our tasks. So yeah, same. For me, business as usual. But that, it comes from a privileged place to say that. It's interesting to see how the world has handled this, going to online video calls and all of that. Well, let's back up a little. First and foremost, prior to the pandemic, how would you have defined work-life balance? And has that changed at all now? Here we are, 2020.
I would say so. I think that the pandemic helped me, and I think it helped all of us to slow down.
Yeah.
And I have to say, even before the pandemic, I was reading books about slowing down and studying the art of slowing down, but not actually slowing down very much in practice. Mm-hmm. And so as a busy women entrepreneur and mother and partner and so on, life is busy.
Yeah.
It's intense. I think there's no way around that. However, the pandemic has slowed everyone down. And my partner has been furloughed, so he's at home, and we have longer lunches. We have lunches outside, and I'm really enjoying this. I want to really anchor that in my calendar so that this becomes the norm. So I've actually changed my lunch break from 30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
Because I was really inspired by the lockdown and a recent trip to France as well, where it's we don't have a French equivalent for la dolce vita, but the lifestyle of longer meals, coffee at the end of the meal. I want that to continue. So I've actually readjusted my calendar accordingly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's very, and it's very spot on. And what I'm hearing as well is that prior to all of this, we were working at such breakneck speeds. And there was also this like foundational rule or belief system out there that if I just worked more hours or if I just hustled harder, then my business would be bigger, more successful, more profitable, right? A lot of people believe in that because that's what's sort of piped out into the world. And I think that you're spot on. I think that we've all had to slow down. We've all had to change the way we work in some people in very significant ways. And that rule just doesn't hold up anymore, right? Like more does not equal more successful. More hours does not equal, more revenue, right?
Absolutely. I think that a lot of it, certainly for me, was about workaholism.
Yeah.
It was about not feeling like I was doing enough ever.
Yeah.
And so to fix that, I've actually hired a new team member. I think I don't want to be too harsh on myself. I think some of it was mild workaholism, but also I did have a lot on my plate, and I recognized that. And so during the pandemic, actually, when was this? May, I advertised for a business manager position, and I found my unicorn. I found an amazing person who's now a part of our team, who's supporting me really, really well. And that has made a huge difference in my day. And it's really wonderful to feel supported in this way. And in fact, I'm now recruiting for someone who's going to support me more at home as well. Because I think that not going back to the craziness also means having a bigger team and better systems. And so something that I learned from one of my mentors years ago is in order to have it all, you can't do it all. So I had to remind myself of that. And whilst it's a financial investment and it's not necessarily an easy decision to recruit new people, I think that also having the extra help at home is going to help me to continue to be sane and to work in a healthy way. So getting support with simple things like, laundry and maybe even cooking dinner once in a while and things like that will make a difference.
And you know what I hear in that is truly the base level is simplifying. It's taking a look at all the things that are on your plate currently as a small business owner and going, well, what part of this do either I not enjoy doing or could I delegate to somebody that I trust to build a team to support me so that I can do the stuff that I love doing, the work that lights me up, the parts that give me what I desire most. And I think it's such a counterintuitive thought process of like, well, hang on, clients are canceling and people are losing money. And this is the time to batten down the hatches, not to add to your payroll, not to add to your bottom line. But it's exactly the opposite, right? Because I'm imagining now that you have Antonio the unicorn and, a future house manager or otherwise, your revenue is going to grow exponentially, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what you provide for your clients as well, right? It's the ROI on team, on virtual assistants is huge.
Yeah.
Not just financially, but also, like I said, in terms of sanity.
Yeah.
It's a huge difference.
That's right. Well, and I should point out for the record that you and I met through a beloved colleague, Danielle Laporte. We actually met last summer, 2019. The world was completely different then when we met. And, you know, that I know this is true about you and I, is that we do have a core belief in core desired feelings, which is something that Danielle writes in her book, The Desire Map. So it's linking back, you know, how do you want to feel in your everyday life? And then you figure out, well, what am I going to do in order to feel the way you feel? Well, how has the Desire Map changed how you run your own business or how you live your life?
Huge. I'm
Yeah.
so glad you asked that question, because you're right, that's how we met. And
Yeah.
it's so special that we met that way, because Danielle Laporte was one of my most influential mentors, certainly. I discovered the Desire Map in 2015.
Yeah.
And it really changed my relationship with work. At the time, I was a mother of two young children. I had two businesses. I had a psychotherapy practice. I had a property business. I was massively overworked,
Yeah.
to the point where I ended up having a stroke just before my 30th birthday. How crazy is that?
My goodness.
And and then I discovered the Desire Map, and for the first time, I was introduced to this idea of feeling good, which was completely foreign to me. As a high achiever, it was never about feeling good. It was about doing good, doing well, right? It was about results. So for the first time, I gave myself permission to think about, well, what do I truly want? It had never occurred to me that I could change my mind, that I could course correct, maybe even burn the property business. That's exactly what I did. I gave myself permission to burn the property business, transition from psychotherapy to coaching, which had been my desire for a while. I started to feel a bit constricted by the psychotherapy role. I wanted to spread my wings and be a coach. And so it was a huge, huge change, not to mention the fact that I also gave myself permission to live a relationship where I was unhappy for many years. But again, I was grinding my teeth and enduring my way through life. So that's just, how long have you got, for me to tell you what the Desire Map did. So thank you, Danielle. Thank you so much for this work.
Yeah, well, and I think that really pinpoints what I heard in what you said there is permission. And permission, I think, is a very key piece of the puzzle when you're trying to figure out what your own definition of work-life balance is. Because everybody's going to be different, right? We prioritize certain aspects of our life or what our time schedule looks like differently. But I think what I hear is just when you gave yourself permission to explore or close the chapter on this part of your life or this part of your professional life, that's where everything started to change, right?
Absolutely. And here's a simplifying process. I went from two businesses to one. I'm not saying that's the recipe for everyone, but it worked for me.
Yeah.
And it made it a ton easier.
Sounds like a good idea. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And so, and I think that a lot of times, a lot of us, I'll put my hand up and say it first, is we get sucked into the identity of the thing that we've built, whatever the business looks like at that. And that people will define us this exact way. And so I can't change that because then I would be incongruent with that identity. But it's okay to evolve, right? It's okay for your business and your professional identity to evolve over time.
Yeah. And for me, there was a lot of guilt also in making that decision, because you've grown a business, you've invested a ton of money in that business. And then you turn around and you say to your loved ones, don't want to do that anymore. Change my mind. Sorry.
Right, right. And I think for me, whenever I've closed an aspect of my business or, turned the page in the metaphorical chapter in my life, I also like to take a moment to just celebrate how far I've come and have some sort of ritual, whether it's journaling or having friends over for dinner or even putting things into a fire pit and letting it go. There has to be some ritual to mark the closing of this one chapter and starting of a new. So don't just race off to the next thing immediately. Give yourself that moment to celebrate how much you've done and how far you've come and a ritual to let it go. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So back to work-life balance. One of the things that has been driving me crazy is you hear from productivity experts out there in the last couple of months. Everybody's saying, well, if you haven't figured out how to, speak Japanese or bake sourdough bread, you have obviously wasted all of this lockdown time. You're totally behind, air quotes. What is your response to all of that?
Well, it's funny. I've been working on this recently with one of my clients who admitted to me that she hadn't had a proper holiday for like 3 years.
Woof.
I said, woman, this is it. If you only take one thing from this session, let it be this. I'm not seeing you again for another 3 weeks. You're booking a holiday now in your calendar. I don't want to hear from you. I don't want to see you online. You're going away and you're going to rest. And she gave herself permission to do that. And that's because, again, going back to, I've just come back from the south of France, okay? So I'm all feeling really even more French than usual, even though I'm French. And for me, I was, spending time with my friends and just be lazy by the pool and enjoying a nice bottle of wine. It just reminded me of, there's another kind of productivity that's important to me now, and I want to be productive in the being, not the doing, but the being. Yeah. I want to be good at that.
Yeah.
I'm using those words because in a way I have to trick my productive monkey mind, right? To be good at something. I want to be good at being.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I think a lot of people are now going back to, taking naps, taking coffee break during the day. Yeah. Something that my team and I are doing now is water cooler breaks. Because we're a virtual team, we don't have an office, we don't have a water cooler.
Yep.
So we've now created those breaks where we just meet by the water cooler, the imaginary water cooler, and we just have chats. Yeah. So that we also get to know each other. So, okay, I did write a book, but it wasn't to be productive. It wasn't in the spirit of, this is the time to be super productive and get this book out. Not at all. I wasn't rushed. I simply enjoyed the space early in the morning before my children wake up, between, say, 6 a.m. and 7:30, to write and get some of my learnings out for the benefit of my clients. Yeah. But it didn't come from a place where I was competing with myself or putting any pressure on myself. It really came from pleasure. And likewise with my running, I'm not competing with anyone. I'm not signing for any race. I'm running simply because it's an enjoyable part of my routine. Yeah. And I think that if someone wanted to take up Japanese, that's great, but let it come from real joy. Yeah. I think, rather than an obligation.
Yeah, or not doing enough. I think that the not enoughness comes and stems from comparison, looking at others, either what they show on their highlights reel in social media or otherwise. And no good ever comes from that, right? Not even a little bit. What you said there, it sparks me, reminds me of a conversation I had with Trevor Blake earlier this season on how to structure your 5-hour workday. And I'll put a link in the show notes for that episode if you haven't heard it. It's the simplifierspodcast.com. And, he's same. He actually works 5 hours a day, works from home, completely remote team as well, owns his own business. By the way, sold 3 businesses for $300 million. So maybe there's something there. I don't know. And has a 2-hour lunch with his wife every single day. They've been married 40 some odd years. And, I think that what we forget as business owners is that we have the power to choose. We are our own horrible bosses sometimes. And so because we have the ability to choose, it not only means we have the ability to choose what our timetable looks like, how much time we focus on client work or, invoicing or writing or whatever, but we also have the power to choose our perception, our mindset of what's going on. I had heard an interview with Eckhart Tolle recently where he refused to call it a lockdown. He calls it a retreat. This time is a time for retreat and reset. Of
Oh,
course.
that's lovely.
Yeah. And it's so interesting how our subtle word choices changes our perception of what actually is happening to us.
Yes, Marie. And what you're saying makes me think about a conversation I recently had with Gina DeVee on my podcast, where I was telling her that, sometimes when you close the office and you close the laptop, but you get that horrible feeling of, oh, but I've got so much more to do.
Mm-hmm.
Her perspective on that was interesting because she said, well, we want to create a healthy relationship with work. And so when we close the office, we want to remind ourselves that we've been productive.
Yeah.
And so worrying about the work is like having dinner this evening and worrying about what I'm going to eat tomorrow. There's no need to worry about what I'm going to eat tomorrow. No more than there's a need to worry about the more work. The more work, it's all going to be there for me tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And so I'm practicing having even better boundaries, not just external boundaries, but also internally, so that when I'm having breakfast, I'm not thinking about work. And then also after work, it's a different conversation.
Yeah.
I'm also learning to have that separation also mentally in my own mind. And I have to say, a simplifying process that I would like to recommend is something I've been working on with my new business manager, Antonio. He is very focused on the process versus the result. And so what we keep going back to is, what are the 2-3 things we need to focus on every day to get to the desired destination?
Yeah.
The 2-3 things. That's all.
That's it.
And so we've streamlined our work. We've cleaned up the calendars to simply focus on those 2-3 things. Of course, I always get carried away because, I'm the visionary. I'm the crazy thinker. So I'm always like, Antonio, can we do this and this and that? He's like, nope.
Yeah.
And so he's really helping me to keep on track. There's an app that I like to use as well called Momentum, which I use to keep on track with those 2-3 actions a day.
Yeah.
I've actually added a few more to do with my morning routine, like chanting, meditating. And if those things are achieved every single day, I win.
And that's such a valid point, because I think a lot of us that start businesses, we are the same. We're visionaries. We're ideas people. I would have started 20 businesses in the last 4 months if anybody would have let me. Like I'm brimming with ideas, but you do have to laser focus in and simplify down and say, okay, well, yeah, I could do 40 tasks today, but if I actually simplify down to 2 or 3 that are the most powerful, the most impactful, the highest yielding, that's going to push the needle closer to what it is you want to achieve. And, back to Danielle's point, how you want to feel. So that's it. That's the beauty and art of simplicity at its finest. So I'm curious then, shifting gears and talking more about the work side of work-life balance. You told me previously you've not had any clients cancel. In fact, things are quite different. Talk to me about your process for nurturing clients and also client creation through what you call service approach. Talk to me about that.
That is my favorite thing to talk about. So I'll gladly oblige. So this has been an evolution. As a psychotherapist, I was trained to not serve my clients between sessions. I could talk to them during the session, and then I wasn't technically allowed to make contact until the following week.
Right.
And so as a coach, I had to grow out of that, and I had to realize the space that I had. I had loads of room for maneuver, a lot of creative freedom, and I could go as far as acting like Michael Jordan's coach, who, if Michael Jordan has a food intoxication at 3 a.m., he calls his coach. So I don't speak to my clients at 3 a.m. I haven't gone that far, but certainly during the lockdown and even before, but even more since the pandemic, I've made myself even more available to my clients. I've really rallied all the forces and kept them really, really close.
Yeah.
Because one of the systems that I use in my business is time and attention. Anything that could present a potential problem, anything that needs to be solved is solved through time and attention. So I doubled up on some of their sessions. I've given them more time. And what that did is that it consolidated and strengthened our relationship as coaches, as coach and coachee. And even better, it helped to grow their results exponentially. I was so amazed to see my clients actually increase their revenue, hire people as well.
Yeah.
And one example actually that comes to mind is one of my clients was going to get fired by one of her clients who's a big tech company. And of course they were going to fire her because they needed to cut costs. And so she called me and said, Nance, I'm losing this client. What can I do? This is really a bummer, because she had made staffing decisions based on the number of clients that she was working with.
Yeah.
And so I said, the system is always the same: time and attention. Let's communicate with them. Let's see if we can get on the phone with them, well, as in she, and let's hear what they're up to. What's really the problem? What are the challenges that they're facing now? And so my client really took the time to have numerous meetings with them, understand the new challenges that they were facing. And she ended up signing them on a new, bigger contract where she's now getting paid even more money and serving them at an even higher level.
Yeah.
Which is a win-win.
Yeah.
So communication solves all problems.
And, that really speaks to me. And it reminds me of a conversation I had with Dr. Deb Gordon. And she was talking about embracing the uncomfortable. How many times have we avoided a phone call or, delayed on responding to an email because we're like, oh, but what if they cancel? What if they reject me? What if they say horrible things? Or you go, oh, I'll deal with that tomorrow. And when a client throws up a red flag, even if it's a tiny red flag of like, we're kind of looking at our budgets right now, this is the time for you to really develop in your courage and step forth and ask and pick up the phone. I think so many times we shirk back to responding via email or text message, when a lot of things can really be solved by actually communicating in a much clearer way, right?
Marie, exactly. That was my hashtag for today, actually. Hashtag pick up the phone.
Yes.
There you have it.
It's so true, right? But it's so scary sometimes for a lot of us, because we've grown to be a community that doesn't like to talk on the phone.
Yep. Especially millennials, we are the screen generation. I'm reading a book about that, actually, how we are actually losing our social skills. Even on dating sites, people meet on Tinder and Match.com, and then when it comes to the real thing, they don't know what to say. It's like humans don't really know how to communicate with one another. So as entrepreneurs, we want to be on the leading edge. We want to be the people that absolutely communicate. And I think that's how we keep our sales skills fresh as well, by continuing to be and stay in a conversation. I had a teacher who said to me, Nancy, if you're not in a conversation, you're not working.
Yeah.
Never forgot that.
Yeah. Well, and I want to clarify something that you said earlier. You said, when you really realized your clients were needing more support from you, you were giving them more time. Were you upping their rates, or were you keeping their what they paid you the same, but you were becoming more available? Or talk to us about that.
Yeah, it was a gift.
Yeah.
It was a gift of my time.
Yeah.
And if they needed flexibility on payments, as if they needed more time, you got it, of course.
Yeah. And, I think what that really speaks to is integrity. It speaks to your core values and, realizing people are human. And I think that a client, when you pull it out and you have that conversation and you say, hey, I see you, and I see you're in a place where it's a little bit uncertain, and I am on your team, rather than, hey, your invoice is past due, Nancy, when are you going to pay? Right? Like, that's a completely different approach, and the person on the receiving end is also going to respond in different ways versus the other, right?
Yes. That's why I've designed my business very much like yours. It's a boutique business, which gives me the space to really take a look at my clients individually.
Yeah.
And I like to know them intimately. I like to know their pet's name, their partner's name, and what they like to eat. Yeah. It's really important to me.
Yeah. And then I think, from my point of view, it's all about customer service at that point. It's not just base level. It's not like, oh, well, our next call is on Wednesday at 5:00. It's thinking about what's going on throughout the entire week.
Oh, yes. It's not just transactional.
Yeah,
absolutely.
For sure. So then let's flip over then to the life side. I know quite a few of our listeners are parents like you and I. And, in the UK, schools reopened for some students as early as June 1st, 2020. But I know there's quite a few people in America right now that their schools are supposed to be opening in August and September and are in a big panic right now of, do I send them back? Do I continue to try to homeschool? I mean, what advice would you give those parents that are sort of in that space right now, juggling that in addition to running a business from home?
So the first thing is you want to calendarize your personal life. Yeah. What I mean by that is every day on my calendar, in the afternoon, I have a slot that says park with the kids. And it's not that I'm going to forget to go to the park, but I want to show up with the same level of commitment and punctuality. Yeah. I don't always do it. I have to say, it's still a work in progress. I'm still learning the art of showing up for my personal commitment with the same precision as I do in my professional life for my clients. Yeah. So calendarize your personal life. My fiance and I also calendarize our holidays, our dates, and we keep to our word. Mm-hmm. The second thing will be don't put pressure on yourself. I think that personally, I think academically, I think our children are going to be fine. Of course, we have workbooks. I ask them to do a bit of math every morning and to keep up with the reading, and that's all good. Yeah. But actually right now, my focus is more on the life skills. Mm-hmm. I see this as a great time for my children to learn how to be kids, because I appreciate that they don't have the same childhood that I had. Yeah. In my days, in the 80s, early 90s, I could go out all day and come back for dinner, and my parents wouldn't bat an eyelid. That's how it was. Yep. Right? I could just climb on my bike and I'd be gone. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we live in a different world now. I don't know that there's more danger necessarily, but it's just that now children live more indoors. So I love that my children now have more time to get those nature skills, to get the life skills as well. I mean, basics like, cooking pasta, loading the dishwasher, folding your clothes. Those are really, really important things as well. Yeah. So I'm glad that they actually have more time to focus on that right now.
Yeah, I 100% agree with both points. I live and die by my Google Calendar. If it doesn't exist in the calendar, it doesn't exist in life. And, from a practical point of view, I have a scheduler link. So when people book time into my schedule, if I have go to the gym or go to the park or lunch booked into my calendar, it means that people cannot access those times. They are set in stone just the same as if a paying client was booking in time in my calendar too. So, set your systems up for success. That's one very clear way to do it. And also, I think it's really interesting. So I've talked to quite a few friends who have been homeschooling their kids for years, not just because of the pandemic. And what I hear over and over and over again from those parents is the reality is this: to teach your kid, you maybe need 2 hours a day to really teach them the fundamentals of what the curriculum is. Everything beyond that, the reason schools are 6 to 7 hours long is because there are 20 to 25 kids in a classroom, and some kids work faster and some kids work slower, and teachers are trying to teach 25 kids. But the same material, the same curriculum only takes a couple of hours to actually teach them. So I think that same with you is like, take the pressure off of trying to fit or homeschool for 6, 7 hours a day, because your kids just simply don't need it.
Oh, thanks. I'm off the hook. 2 hours it is.
Right. It is. It's so true. And so when we took that as a mentality in homeschooling here, it changed everything. It really, truly changed everything. We cranked through all the worksheets and all the assigned stuff, and we kicked it all back to the school. But we actually created our own little homeschool academy at my house. We called it Lionheart Academy. And, the other hours of the day, we would bake, or, we'd go out to a field and pick a flower and learn about flower arranging, or, dissect it under a microscope.
Yeah. And I heard that your daughter is a keen baker as well, right?
She loves it. So when we do all these things in various ways, it, all of a sudden you're right. It enriches the life skills side, and it changes the whole dynamic of what homeschooling is. It's not about just sticking your kid in front of an iPad and saying, "Stop bothering me," which some days, I realize may be the case, but it can be so much more that if we take the pressure off of ourselves.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So then now, here we are, again, in the middle of the pandemic. Who knows really when this season will end and the new will begin. What is your vision, that you have for the future of what work could look like, not only for yourself, but for your clients? What do you think is going to result from this pandemic?
I'm shooting for a 4-day week.
Yeah.
It's something that I've been fantasizing about for a long time.
Yep.
Something I did for a year or so, and then I went back to 5 days, but now I'm going back to 4 days again.
Yes.
Friday is not completely off yet, but it's more of a quiet day. Some of the team members are actually off completely on Fridays. And as for me, it's a day usually of actually not coaching clients. It's a day for me to catch up on admin. And, the idea is to gradually completely move to 3-day weekends. And I hope that the world follows.
Yes.
It would just make sense.
It totally does. Oh, 1,000%. I 100% agree. And actually, I've been doing that for a couple of years now in unofficial ways, actually taking Thursday to be my free, I call it a self-care day. And I tell you, it's night and day. It really does change how I show up for my clients on my on days by giving yourself that space to breathe. My prediction is I think a lot of corporate brands are going to start to realize that they don't need these giant, luxurious offices around the world. And I think that office space is going to shrink. People are going to be more open to the idea of working from home by choice, and using the office space as more of a hub for team meetings or presentations and things like that, but not needing everybody to have a desk or have an office designated for themselves.
More freedom for everybody. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah. And I also have grandiose, very big blue sky visions that maybe just one day, maybe commercial real estate developers will say, what am I going to do with these big high-rise office spaces, especially in London? And, rethink building those spaces to be work life for people that want to get on the property ladder at a much more affordable place. But that's my crazy idea. Like I think
I love it.
is possible, and also potentially maybe in some cities and urban spaces could be a solution for homelessness, you know. So these buildings are going to need to get repurposed, and that's what I hope will come.
Awesome idea.
Yes. Well, so people that want to learn more about you, Nancy, you are a bright, shiny light, I do believe. They can go to your website, nancyflorence.com. You also have a podcast and a radio show. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, yes, it's very juicy. It's called the Wealth YOS Show. And I like to interview brilliant people. I like to interview my mentors. We recently had some great guests. I've already mentioned Gina DeBee, and like you, we had Danielle Laporte and Steve Chandler, so all of my heroes. And I'm working on Beyonce still.
Amazing. You'll get her. No problem.
Exactly.
Yeah, it'll come in time.
And you can find me on LinkedIn, Nancy Florence. We currently have one spot open for a new client. If this podcast resonates, if you want to see if we're a good match for working together, we do have space to support one more brilliant woman entrepreneur to grow her team and grow from multi-six figures to seven figures.
Brilliant. Again, so her website is nancyflorence.com. All of these links are in the show notes, including your LinkedIn and your Instagram as well. So a couple of quick questions before we wrap up that I like to ask everybody. First and foremost, tell us what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system.
It will be a book by Byron Katie called I Need Your Love. Is That True? It's about how to overcome our need for approval, our need to be liked, our need to be impressed. And it's a fantastic read for somebody like me with, a fairly good-sized ego.
Yeah.
And it's really helping me to get over my codependency. It's helping me in my professional relationships, my personal relationships. Is helping me to become aware of how I sometimes, through voice, tone, body language, try to manipulate the outcome, try to be liked. And so the idea is that, according to Byron Katie, the more we can free ourselves from that, the happier we're going to be, the more free we're going to feel. And so it's a really fantastic read, very, very thought-provoking.
Yeah, I've actually not heard about this book, so I'm excited to link it up and see more about it. It'll be in the show notes for everybody as well. So tell us, who is one person in your network, somebody you know personally, that you just feel is like up to brilliant things? We could shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast.
Sure. Well, I've already talked about him plenty, and that will be our business manager, Antonio Massimini, who I met on LinkedIn. And it's such a privilege to work with this man because he's super talented. He used to be an entrepreneur. He used to sell ice cream, actually.
Wow.
He has a lot to teach and a lot to share about the process. He's just a brilliant mind. And I think that, and that's why I'm encouraging all of my clients to have conversations with him, because 1 hour with Antonio is worth it. It's a gold mine.
Amazing. Oh, we'll definitely link up with him. So I believe gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what are you grateful for today?
Today, I'm grateful for our friendship. You know, it's funny the way we met. You were like a love at first sight kind of friendship. You know, it was just outside of this church, and I'm on my way home. You're on your way home, and it's like, hey, how are you doing? And then, you know, for me, it just clicked, and it felt really natural. And so, yeah, I'm really, really grateful for that. And thank you for inviting me to your podcast.
Yes, certain people you just connect with and you're like, wow, our stories are very parallel. This is interesting how we've connected at this season of our life. So yeah, I'm grateful for you as well. So again, people can connect with you on your website or through LinkedIn. Again, those links are all in the show notes at thesimplifierspodcast.com. And one final question for you, Nancy, is this. And again, thank you so much for your time today. Someone somewhere is listening to this podcast and she is in the thick of it. She is anywhere besides feeling like she has any sort of control over her work-life balance. It's all a hot mess express. What's one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
Just be average. Just be an average person. I say this to my friends as well. Just be an average dude. I think that trying to be great, there's a problem with that, because we either feel great or we feel bad. So let's see if we can play in the middle. Yeah. So just be an average woman for today.
Just for today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Nancy.
Great. Thank you.